Okay. Hey, everybody. Just kidding. Welcome to my regular Wednesday night live stream. We've pushed it back to 7:30 p.m. today. I'm hoping everyone can see me, hear me properly because I'm connected to my mobile tonight because the internet has not been working. And I would love to introduce you all to the fabulous friend and confidant, actually. I've been friends with her for over a year, which is super exciting. Evelyn Rae. Hello, Miss Evelyn Rae.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh no, I'm excited to have you. I'm happy to have you on my show anytime. Before we begin, I'm going to start with the normal tradition that I do on every show. Today's Bible verse is from the book of Deuteronomy. I actually quoted it earlier on my Instagram, chapter 31, verse 8. I've written it here because I don't want to. The Lord himself goes before and is with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For someone like me who worries a lot, that is definitely a Bible verse that I need. Anyway, what's your favorite Bible verse? Not that that was one of my planned questions.
Lots of people ask me what my favorite is. I don't have a favorite. I have favorite books of the Bible.
You don't
Genesis.
have a favorite Bible verse?
Yeah, no, it depends on my mood. But yeah, Genesis and Revelation are my favorite books, beginning and the end. But I do like lots of verses. Love covers a multitude of sins. That's one of my favorite. But yeah, as I said, depends on what I'm kind of going through. There's not really one that I cycle through. It just depends on the day.
Well, yeah, I will say that one's been my go-to lately, and anything related to giving your worries away and letting them go, because that's something I do struggle with. And so it's good to know that, we shouldn't worry, and that to leave it in God's hands. It's just harder. It's easier said than done, as you well know, because we've spoken about that. Okay, yeah, let's begin. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of questions and all the annoying political stuff, I think it's a good idea to have a bit of fun. So Evelyn, I'm going to ask you some really silly questions and you're going to answer them, okay? Are you ready?
Okay.
All right, DC or Marvel? Come on.
Probably, yeah. Look, these are big questions, dear. Okay. Like the Bible verses, it depends on the mood. But I would say my favorite ultimate storylines, comics are the X-Men. So I would have to say it would be Marvel.
There you go. Goku or Vegeta?
Goku.
Fair enough.
Without
Britney. Yeah, I agree. Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera?
Christina Aguilera.
You mean
Easy.
vocally? Yeah. Hilary Duff or Lindsay Lohan?
Hilary Duff.
NSYNC or Backstreet Boys?
Oh, Backstreet Boys, please.
Same. Same. Keto diet or junk food?
Oh, junk food every day, but I'm on keto diet, sadly.
Yes, I know. Everybody Loves Raymond or Seinfeld?
Seinfeld.
Oh.
I'm surprised that they still actually allow it to air on TV with, the woke culture, but love it.
Everybody Loves Raymond.
Cats. You're a loser.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs. Cats are jerks.
No, cats are the best. Mariah Carey or Whitney Houston?
Whitney Houston.
Schwarzenegger or Van Damme?
Schwarzenegger. The old Schwarzenegger. The new one.
The one cheating on his wife. Yeah.
The one that's in the jungle with all the animals in that photo, like save the planet. Yeah, not so much, but the old one.
Yeah. Audrey Hepburn or Grace Kelly?
Audrey Hepburn.
Doris Day or Marilyn Monroe?
Ooh, maybe Doris Day.
And finally, Magneto or the Joker?
Oh, the Joker.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. They were easy.
They were fun. I'm going to do this with everyone. I just want to do it with a friend first to see like how it rolls. But I'll have to alter it with each individual. By the way, Rational Wrongthink, yes, I've been getting a series of unsubs lately. I had about 6,800 and now I'm down to like 6,750 or something. So sorry to hear that. Just make sure you click on the bell. That's super helpful. Joel, these are important questions. Yes, they were. All right.
They're defining moments of friendships, really.
I think so. They really are. And also, by the way, your makeup looks fine, and just ignore the haters and the critical thinkers or speakers, whatever the word is, because I get that a lot too.
Yes, lots of men like to pretend they understand makeup on women and what you have to have on TV to actually look like you're wearing makeup. But I am wearing half the amount that I did last night, so it should make people happy. I like to keep people happy.
Well, you can only do that for so long until you finally reach a point one day where you realize, oh, wait, I can't keep everyone happy.
No,
definitely
not.
That's what I learned. All right, let's begin with the actual interview, the official interview. So we're not going to talk about the whole cop thing. I think you've done a lot of that already, and it's probably brings you back some horrible memories. I'm surprised you don't suffer from PTSD. So we're going to strictly speak about Christianity, the condition of Christianity and its thought leaders, as well as the dilution of conservatism at large. So my official first question to you is, you do a lot of commentary on these issues. Is there what is it that you're noticing? Is it that you're noticing it in churches? Is it that you're noticing it in commentators? Like what is it that you're noticing, and why did you start talking about
it? So I think, all of us know that conservatives, Christians, some libertarians, we get massively censored on social media and all these things that obviously say things that offend the people that are kind of running the show in these particular areas. And I'm not sure the exact reason why I chose to sort of talk about it. I guess I felt that it was necessary to put a Christian voice out there. I think that there's a lot of economically conservative people that have got quite a loud voice and quite a big following and a big audience. But I think that unfortunately, people who are unapologetically Christian and who, are sort of out there as, saying that they get their worldview from Christ, from the Bible, is sort of sometimes lacking. I think that there was a great tweet that came out a while ago that said the time for the mediocre Christian is over and Satan owns the fence. And I think that's the point where I feel could be leading to why we are losing some of the culture wars, because of this sort of diluted and watered down and almost making excuses for form of conservatism. So I think that, sadly, there aren't many unapologetically Christian conservatives who do have the opportunity to have a platform to speak. I think, Well,
you've done an amazing job, I tell you. I've known you for over a year, and within like 9 months, you've garnered yourself quite an audience. Well done. That's such a blessing.
It's the blonde hair.
It's the blonde hair. It's the beautiful blue eyes, and it's obviously a lot of other things. You're intelligent, and I think people will see all of that. And obviously, you're being a cop is super unique, and I think you deserve all the success in the world. I'm so happy for you. Go ahead.
No, I always feel awkward when people compliment me. I don't really know what to say. Thank you, I guess. But I don't know. It started off as just something I did as a hobby, and it's kind of progressed into something a little more. And I'm just grateful for any space and time that I get. And I'm really, grateful for people who are willing to sort of hear what I have to say. I'm mindful of not talking about things I don't feel I have an authority on. There are lots of things that people speak about that they probably shouldn't, things that they might need to research more, things that they might need to have a little bit more wisdom on. So I try my best to speak about things that I've experienced myself or studied or have some kind of lived experience for. But yeah, anyway.
Completely fair. So regarding our false prophets today, they're all over online, they're all over the political scene. How do you personally, I mean, obviously you were a former detective, so you have an ability, even if we were to take away the God factor and your faith, you have an ability to read a situation and read people, and you can sort of pluck them out and go, okay, that's not a good person, that's a manipulative person, that's a false prophet. Like, it wasn't too long ago that some Indian, I think it's an Indian American, he died, and they were saying that he actually abused a whole bunch of women. And then you had all of these ministers, like Todd Friel from Wretched, Ray Comfort, and a whole bunch of other ministers saying, yes, we had a feeling about this particular guy, and he was a false prophet, etc., etc. I would say the same thing personally of someone like a Joel Osteen, Joyce Meyer. Anyway, long story short, how do we pluck them out? Like, unless someone told me, I wouldn't know on my own. I wouldn't be able to practice that spiritual discernment unless I heard them. Oh, Ravi Zachariah, thank you, Tarkin. Twitter follower. Hey, Tarkin. Hey, how are you, buddy? Yeah. So, how do you do it? Where does the spiritual discernment for you come in? Is it just something that you hear? Is it something that or do you sort of wait on them for a little bit?
I think it's quite easy. I think you know I think, well, it's not easy, but it's important to remember that, out of all the disciples, like, people didn't even recognize Judas as a betrayer. So I think it's important to remember that people can, kind of be fooled quite easily. It's our human nature to, not have as much discernment as Christ would. But when Jesus sort of asked the question, who is it? They all said, is it me? Is it me? And
not I, not I, Lord.
Yeah. So, I mean, but something that I always like to do is whatever I do, I like to have the Bible in one hand and the situation in the other. I think that scripture is sufficient. People always say, why doesn't God speak to me? Can God help me? And it's like, it's right there in front of you. Sola Scriptura. It's there for the taking. You've got Genesis all the way through to Revelation that can help you and guide you and help you sort of grow on your discernment and your wisdom. And something that I live by is, you will know them by their fruit.
I agree with that completely.
It's very easy to, you think of the fruits of the Spirit, like goodness, kindness, joy, self-discipline. You can go through all those things, and if you take the time to engage with people and do it respectfully with love and kindness, like we should, and you sort of sit back and judge the situation with those fruits of the Spirit in your heart and in your mind, you can quite soon pick the people who are bearing good fruit and the people who are not, the people who are living consistently to what the Bible teaches us, the people who are living in true repentance. Because let's face it, we all, even Christian conservatives, we all sin, we all make mistakes, we are not perfect. I continually sin and make mistakes, but the difference I think it is repentance is turning from your sin, is being repulsed by your sin, is not wanting to continue to live in it, and to actively taking steps to get out of sin and to actually, redeem yourself from those things. So I guess when I am on the internet and I'm looking at things, people can say a lot of things, but I like to watch and observe and see what sort of fruit people are bearing, and that's usually how I gauge things. And again, Bible in one hand, news in the other, and that's the best way to kind of discern things.
Check that out. Thank you, Shooter Down Under. That's super sweet. Well, I think sometimes just sort of observing a person from a respectful distance, and you kind of do get an idea. It's unusual to have someone say, "I'm a Christian, I believe in God," yet they're sort of like wearing a G-string, maybe on an Instagram, or like you know, taking their top off in a bikini shot. I think it was Fred that sort of did a post on that, which I found super interesting. So certainly sometimes it's super obvious. And I agree that it's about, like, we do sin. Someone asked a question here earlier, actually, saying, it's rational wrong thing. Does engaging in a sinful act make someone a false prophet, though? No, it doesn't. Who was David? Of David and Goliath fame again? Oh, the king. Yeah, he became king. So sometimes it's not about necessarily saying, well, that's a false prophet because this, and then just pointing at them and judging them. But if they continually continue to do that particular sin, that's sort of how you know. Is that what would you base it on a pattern?
I think it comes down to a person's heart. I think it comes down to their desires, and someone who truly has the Holy Spirit dwelling in them is most likely repulsed or disgusted by sin. So even though we do sin, you don't affirm the sin, you don't justify the sin. Yeah, you aren't out there saying, you know, that I'm living this way and God's okay with that. That's heresy. That's blasphemy. I think that the difference is, we all sin. We all do things that we shouldn't do, but it's the acknowledgement that we do wrong, and it's not the justification of the wrong.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just laughing at what Fred said. I don't agree with that, by the way, Fred. It's funny, but I don't think every girl at TPUSA is like that. Yeah, for sure. So
I think just quickly, it's in, like, you know, if you look at the Bible, Judas denied Christ, but so did Peter. But what is the difference between the two? The difference is only one repented.
Exactly. No, I completely understand. All right, well, what about in our churches? What's the point in going? This is how I personally feel, and I'll still keep going to my church that I found here in Sydney. It's a lovely church, but I'm frustrated because most churches are wearing, Hillsong included, Hillsong is mainstream Christianity, they're wearing masks. They're abiding by the law of man. And now a learned Christian would say, oh, you know, Romans chapter 13 verse 1, you know, that it talks about obeying the leaders that God has here and to respect them and to pray for them. But then we have so many examples in the Bible of civil disobedience. We have the one I mainly use because it's the one I mostly know is Daniel. And how Daniel was he was committing an act of, it was illegal because the king at his own behest arbitrarily decided to make praying illegal. And he continued to pray. And then I was pointed out recently, I think it was by you, that there were midwives. I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that story. There were midwives in the Old Testament who didn't want to commit an act of infanticide. I had no idea that was even a story in the Bible, and they chose not to. Yeah, and then like Moses' mother, like every firstborn was to be killed, and she popped him in a basket and shoved him down the river. And then you have Peter. Is it Peter and Paul? Peter and Paul. Yeah. So what are we supposed to do? Because someone would say, well, see, the Bible contradicts itself. This part of the Bible says this, but then this part of the Bible says that. So who are you supposed to listen to?
I think the Bible doesn't contradict itself, and people who say that it does don't obviously understand the scriptures. And the thing with the Bible is you can pluck any verse out of anywhere and make it sound like what you want it to sound like, but you have to read it contextually. And a lot of the time the rules and things like that, especially that a lot of people like to use against Christians, are the rules like you can't cut your hair, you can't have a tattoo, you can't drink. What they don't realize is that was a specific group of laws that were given to a specific group of people at a specific time for a specific purpose. And that's something that people have to be very mindful of. But something that I will say is that Romans 13 is often, again, sort of taken out of context. And I want to be very careful here, not to preach. I don't want to preach. I just explain my understanding of it. I don't like being a woman. It sounds so like old fashioned, but I'm very mindful of what Paul says in his letters. But my understanding of Romans 13 and everything.
We're just we're
not. We're not, but I just wanted to make it clear that I'm not somebody who believes that a woman should have eldership in a church. I'm very much for
I agree.
I agree with Paul's letters. But anyway, I'll digress.
Yeah.
So basically, Romans 13, how we have to obey the law of the land. What people and with the mask mandates, this is actually a really tricky area because I don't agree with the science or the logic of mask wearing. I think that we've seen enough information. I think we've seen enough information out there to discredit a lot of mask wearing usage. Sure, surgeons benefit from it. That's in a surgical environment. They actually wear it properly. It's very different to what we see on the streets. But I think what's important to remember with Romans 13 is that God's law triumphs man's law. And in the particular instances in the Bible, like Daniel and like the midwives who refused to kill the babies, the law of the land was telling them to go in direct disobedience of Christ's law. Commandment, I think is it number 6, do not murder. And they were certain things, and a lot of laws to do with blasphemy and using, all those types of things, not having any other gods, like in Daniel's case. And if you look at the mask mandates, the tricky thing is, what is it actually like? Is that really in disobedience of God's laws? And again, I don't agree with the mask mandates. Now, something that I do think is possibly in contrast to God's laws is not attending church and not singing in church, because we're commanded to sing praises to God. We are commanded to, to go to church and to be part of that fellowship. I don't think that sort of fellowship includes online fellowship. I think that it's quite specific about like the church community and the eldership and things like that. So things like that, I think that we are certainly skirting towards the edge of, going in the direction of disobeying God's law. And sure, maybe we can see what some of like the Canadian pastors are doing at the moment. They're deciding, with churches shutting down, they are saying that goes against God's law. We're going to keep going to church or they're not going to cap off limits. So some of the ministers over in Canada are allowed to have their churches open, but they're only allowed a certain amount of people in attendance. And if anybody comes past that point, they're supposed to turn them away. And these particular pastors have said, well, I can't turn them away. That goes against God's laws and things like that. The mask mandate, though, is very quite controversial, because unless you have a lawful exemption, I don't see how that disobeys God's laws. And a lot of people won't like me saying that. I don't wear a mask. I have an exemption. I don't think anybody should have to wear a mask. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. But for the church to actually take a biblical position and try and go against that, I'm not sure there's actually a biblical reason they could. According to Romans 13, Caesar kind of owns that, we have that's sort of law of the land, and it doesn't really contradict God's laws. When you talk about attending church and singing praises, then we're talking possibly that's going against God's laws. But yeah, as always, I think that, like we're certainly as Christians skirting on the edge of civil disobedience because of how it's contradicting God's laws. But it's something I'm studying and praying a lot about and considering, because we're at the pointy end of the stick at the moment. And I think as Christians, it's important to not jump into it without a lot of prayer, without a lot of, discipleship and mentorship from elders of our church, because it's a big thing to step out and basically say to the government, God's law is supreme and we're not going to listen. There's lots of consequences, and yes, that's fine, pick up your cross and follow me. But I think it's not something right now, today, that we just all go, yep, stuff the government, don't have to do this. I think it's definitely something that should be considered, but it should be considered with a lot of discernment and wisdom and prayer and supplication and discussions with the elderships of our churches.
Well, let me say that I agree with everything you just stated. The issue here is that I'm turned off by my church for wearing masks, and them telling me to put on my mask, which hasn't happened because I haven't been to church since the lockdown. But when I don't go to a church for a lockdown, I go to a lady's house who lives about 20 minutes away from where I am, and we do like a house church, and then she has her Hillsong church playing in the background, and then me, her, and her husband and a few other people will sort of pray and devote ourselves to all of that. So I'm turned off by my actual church that I found when I came here, because they are abiding by the mandate. And if I decide to not wear my mask, which I haven't done, I do it at supermarkets all the time, I don't have an exemption, but I will not wear the mask. And they don't know that. How are they to know? And if they're all wearing a mask and I'm not, well, then they're protecting themselves anyway. But I can get an exemption. I have several reasons I could get one. But anyway, long story short, if you're turned off by your church for abiding by the rule and the laws of men, to me, that's cucked. That's a pansy behavior from people who should be strong in the Lord and have the Holy Spirit stirring within them to not do that. So how do I get past that? What would your answer to that be? Is my house church thing that I'm doing sufficient, or how do you respond to that?
I'm not really sure what you're asking. Sorry.
You're not sure what I'm asking? How do I
get different trains of thought there? So
okay,
yeah.
Sorry, fair enough. Should I will make it narrower. I'm turned off by my church. I don't want to go to a church that thanks, Valerie. I don't want to go to a church that abides by the law of man. So what do I do?
Well, that's up to you and God, isn't it? I think that I think that when you're picking a church, you've got to make sure it's got a theological understanding that you align with. And if there's a church that you're going to that you don't align with, then you need to leave. But I don't think every church is perfect. I think that churches are a work in progress. I think that if people were to say that church isn't good, I'm going to walk away, like, what was the point of Paul's letters to the church? He constantly was writing to the church of Corinth and, all the other churches out there, trying to help them instead of just saying, I don't like what you're doing, so see you later. I think that churches are something that we all have to build on and work at. And I don't think that it's
sorry.
We want to go to no, I won't say.
I know what you were going to say. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so I think that it's important to not give up on churches because of some disagreements on small things. Like, sure, if there's an issue of heresy, there are some churches that are plain heretical. That's different. But if there are just certain disagreements in whether a church should mask mandate or whether they're not, maybe that's something that doesn't warrant walking away from. Maybe that's something that we need to work at with the church, just like Paul did. He didn't give up on them despite all their sin.
I get that. The thing is, though, this church.
Sorry,
this church.
COVID.
No, you're okay. You're okay.
I'm joking.
This church that I attend has everything that, it's the same minister from when I was back in Melbourne, and so we do align. It's just the fact that they wear masks, and I'm like, they're abiding by the government mandates, and they're doing it because they want to stay open. I actually understand why they're doing it.
But what about the mask mandate goes in direct disagreement with God's laws?
I feel like by them abiding by
don't care about your feelings. Where does it say in the Bible that mask mandates is against God's law?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't. Yeah. It bothers me, though. It bothers
it bothers me too.
Yeah. It's because in my head, there's nothing in the Bible about about a mask. I don't even think that was a thing that they would have known about. But it's certainly them kowtowing to government, petty government, arbitrary rules. And that to me is against God.
But so is the money with Caesar, and how Jesus said, give to Caesar what is to Caesar and give to the Lord what is to the Lord. What, like, you've got to, sure, like not being able to attend church, absolutely, that goes in direct disagreement with God's laws. What about, not being able to sing praises? That's another one. But I think the mask mandate, while I think it's absolute ludicrous and things like that, I am struggling to find in the Bible. And if someone can point it out to me, I'm being genuine here. I don't think that goes in disagreement with God's laws. I mean, look at Caesar at the time. Look at the person that he was, the leader that he was, the things that he was capable of, So you got to, we still were speaking about Romans 13 and have a think about when Romans 13 was written, the rulers that were in place when Romans 13 was written. They weren't great rulers. They weren't. So like a lot of people say, Romans 13 talks about what a leader should be. Absolutely. But it doesn't say, even though this is what they should be, you disobey them. It basically says, even if they're not those things, you obey them unless they go against God's laws.
Sure. All right. Well, let's move on.
I think,
go ahead.
Just one more thing I was going to say. Paul said, if eating meat makes my brother stumble, I won't eat meat. And I think, sometimes we have to make sacrifices for people even when they are wrong.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind.
Absolutely right. All right. So another topic that I outlined was the dilution of conservatism. I made a video about 2 years ago now where I said I no longer considered myself a conservative. However you do. The reason I chose to step away from the label was because here in this country and in the US, conservatives have not conserved anything. We introduced, when I say we, I use that term, I didn't do it, but the conservative government introduced abortion to this country in general. They introduced it in 1960. And then the conservative government made it okay to abort babies up till the 9th month. The conservative government also introduced same-sex marriage when it was already a civil union. They already had civil unions, and so I don't align with any of these actions taken by conservatives. So why would I call myself one? But you do continue to call yourself one. So do you want to first touch on that?
Well, I think that the people that you're mentioning are probably actually not conservative, and they're kind of hijacking the label of such, because
evidently
you've got to try and remember the root of conservatism. What are we trying to conserve? We're trying to conserve life. We're trying to conserve family. We're trying to conserve biblical worldviews and outlooks, biblical law. You got all these certain things, and you've got to ask yourself, are these particular people that you mentioned who are pushing late-term abortion, same-sex marriage, do those things actually align with what conservatism is? No, it doesn't. So
Nope.
I don't think that it's fairly labeled. I don't think that it's accurately labeled. And I certainly do not think that anybody who agrees with a late-term abortion as an example could actually be a proper conservative. It directly goes against everything that conservative politics stands for.
For sure. So in terms, all right, so first of all, the Liberal Party is Australia's mainstream conservative party, but that is merely a mislabeled party, correct?
I think that if you look at Labor versus Liberal, if you're looking at the lesser of two evils over the past, 20 years, Liberal would be the lesser of the two evils. But I wouldn't say that Liberal are conservative today by any means. I think that they lean more conservative, maybe economically and in some things, but socially they're becoming quite liberal, which is the same as Labor. I think that Yeah, I think that it's a different beast than it ever was, but I actually don't think that Liberals have ever won, and I don't think Labor has ever won. I think it's just people go, which is, I didn't want that one, so that one just gets it by default. But I can't remember a time when Australians have probably actually wanted a particular party to win who is in the conservative sort of field of politics, because I know for me, I know what I want to vote and what I want to win, but at the end of the day, if it comes down to it, we'd all prefer Liberal over Labor. But it's even the lines there are starting to get a lot more blurred as we go on. As you mentioned, Gladys, when she was the New South Wales Premier, she allowed for the late term abortion to come in.
Sadly,
things like that, which is quite shocking. But yeah, I think that there are some great political parties at the moment, but they just don't have the numbers that Labor and Liberal have. And I think we're a long way off, sadly, them getting up there in the same sort of category. And I think until that happens, by default, Conservatives will kind of vote for things that will end up getting voted to Liberal.
Sorry, accidentally. Absolutely, I can get on board with that. So what about our thought leaders? I think that's the term that's now being used. So you're talking about, sometimes you're talking about the dilution of conservatism. What does that mean when you say it?
Well, exactly what I just said. You have people who...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you have people who label themselves as conservatives but live a very different life to what conservatism actually is. And I think that's half of the problem. And I think that why I say that it's diluted down is because we've almost forgotten what makes us a conservative. We've forgotten the roots of what we are. And a lot of people, I find things are very confusing because I don't understand why people say they're conservative yet live a different life to that. But I think that's the culture that we're in right now. I think that a lot of people are sort of a bit complacent and sort of at the moment there's money in what they're doing and, you know, there's gain in what they're doing. So they're going that way instead of maybe, you know, going the hard route, which is being unapologetically conservative and you know, just standing for true conservatism. All
right. Well, I hope you go ahead. Were you going to say something?
I was just reading the comments.
Sorry. Yeah. All right. So one of the, I hope you don't mind me name dropping at least one person. I recently saw Tomi Lahren. She was wearing a hat, and the hat said, "Vote for Caitlyn." So that's Caitlyn Jenner. And a lot of people were calling her out saying, well, she's not a true conservative anymore. I still think she has conservative values, but I don't think necessarily that she should be demonized for for thinking how she's thinking, because she's looking at the policies. She's looking at the person rather than the policy and the traditional, I think, elements that make her a conservative. So is that diluting conservatism?
Well, I think that's economically conservative. I think Caitlyn Jenner is definitely not a conservative by any means. I think that they are very much economically conservative, but very socially liberal. And I think that their very existence show and what they're doing socially in their life shows that they are not in fact conservative. And I think there are a lot of people out there in the conservative spectrum who are very economically conservative and maybe libertarian, which is small government, which, yes, as a conservative, I am all for small government. Less government, the better. But yeah, I don't like to get into names, and I don't like to
so is
call out anybody. Yeah,
sorry.
No, I just think I think that I won't. I would never endorse Caitlyn Jenner. I think that the policies that are attractive economically may be great, but I think eventually the socially more liberal type of policies would eventually come in. So for me, I wouldn't waste my time personally But yeah, I think that yeah, I think everyone that's sort of out there has got their own opinions. But as me, as a conservative, as a Christian conservative, I would not endorse Caitlyn Jenner personally. If
No,
that
that's
helps
understandable.
without, yeah.
No, that's okay. I didn't mean to. I didn't want to name drop exactly, but I wanted to sort of give an example of something like that, because I've been called out. I've been called out many times. So, by the particular standard that you hold, I'm doing the wrong thing by bringing on former transgendered people who changed back, or trans or gay people. But I have this belief in platforming someone, letting others give those ideas oxygen, and then they can turn them down. They can be like, well, I don't agree with that. Am I somehow like diluting conservatism, like by the standard which you hold? Do you understand what I mean?
Having a conversation with someone doesn't mean you're diluting conservatisvism. It depends on whether you affirm things. It depends on whether whether you are agreeing or trying to promote something. But if you're literally just having a conversation, there's nothing wrong with that. I have conversations all the time with all different kinds of people who have a different political worldview than myself. I think that there is absolutely nothing wrong with having discussions. I think as human beings, it's the best form of accountability. It's also the best way to grow and learn. But I think when you have those conversations with people, you just keep in mind who you are as a person and not compromise who you are for fame or for favor or for position. I think you just have to be true to who you say you are. But there's nothing wrong with talking to people.
No, I agree. The only reason I asked was because I feel like there is something to what you're saying. I agree that conservatism, however it's said, is absolutely being diluted. And the problem is that we're starting to maybe promote the wrong people, generally speaking, and allowing certain groups of people we wouldn't have normally allowed now into the community. But then at the same time, that sounds a little judgmental as well. It's like, but hey, that particular person who happens to be transgendered is promoting pro-life causes, is this and is this and is this, and they just happen to be transgendered. Like, is there a line there that we should draw? Or they might be gay, or they might be whatever it is. Do you know what I mean?
What do you mean, like, practically, when you say line to be drawn? What are you talking about there?
So the standard of the standard of conservatism. Where do we draw the line of what is diluting it and what is not diluting it? So by allowing a transgendered person to speak on behalf of, let's say, a pro-life cause, or a person who is same-sex attracted, and they talk about euthanasia and not killing our people, isn't that a good thing to have someone allied with us who happens to be a bit different, not heteronormative?
I think something that I like to live by is to remember that we are saved through Christ, not through man. And I like to kind of use that mentality when I think about God's good work. Sometimes God's work comes from the most unsuspecting of people. Doesn't mean his work is any less good. It doesn't mean his work is doing, bad things, but if we're talking about conservative politics, as from a Christian conservative, I think that, because I think if you're a Christian conservative, you live your life a certain way and according to the Bible. And I think it's a question of who we legitimize. I think it's a question of, what we say we will is right according to the Bible. I think that people can say what they want. People can do what they want. If people want to go and rally against euthanasia and late-term abortion, that's fantastic. But I think when we legitimize people, we're affirming that their representation is accurate. So what they are claiming to represent yeah, we need to be mindful of those things. But I have no issue with people going out there and doing the right thing. If the right thing is according to the Bible, if they're going out there saving babies, euthanasia, that's fantastic. But I think that it's really important to not jeopardize our own biblical standpoint and worldview. And I think that there are certain things that I wouldn't promote and people I wouldn't promote because I feel like it would be in contradiction to my beliefs. But I'm never going to treat anybody differently. And I'm always going to love my neighbor and respect them and their voice. And I have lots of friends from all different kinds of worldviews. And I still love them as I would love you, as I would love everybody else who's a Christian. But I think my real issue is today is Christians, conservatives are too apologizing for their views. We are too forgiving of things that contradict God. We are too watered down in our convictions. And I think that we have to be in the world, but not of the world. And I think the lines
absolutely.
between those things are starting to get blurred. But I was talking to a friend today, actually, when I was talking about conservative politics and why we're sort of failing. And something I do want to mention, and she sort of challenged me on this, and it actually made me think it's very true what she said, is that conservatives sometimes don't offer enough grace for people. And I think we can get trapped in not our convictions, but in what we think is so right, that when a conservative steps out of the line, we almost like bully them and we're really cruel to them.
I've been through that.
And I think it's something like we need to be very strong in our convictions and unapologetic about God's truths. But at the same time, part of God's truths is redemption. Part of God's truths is grace, and grace is unmerited favor. We are undeserving of it. And the thing about grace is it is freely offered to us time and time again when we repent of our sins. So I think as conservatives as well, when we are kind of moving forward with our politics, if we want to go out there and start really fighting and being strong conservatives, we can't just do one side of it, which is the hard, bold, unapologetic side. We also have to be kind and gracious and forgiving, because we are not more righteous than Christ, and he forgives us time and time again. So I think as conservatives, that's something we also need to be mindful of as we go forward, because Christian conservatives without grace is like half the gospel, which is just as bad as the prosperity gospel. You got to give it all. You can't do one side or no side. So I think if we are going to be strong, unapologetic Christians who are out there fighting the good fight, we also have to not turn on each other. We also have to not be ungracious, because who are we to say who deserves grace and who doesn't deserve grace? Because it's only by God's grace that I'm actually here and breathing and able to do this. So I think that's something important as well.
I love that. That's usually my morning prayer. My morning prayer is not about me. It's about glorifying God. I'm like, thank you, Lord. Thank you that I am breathing. Thank you that I'm here today. And thank you for the sacrifice you made me. That's super important to start your day that way. All right. So I'm going to get on to some audience questions. I don't know if this is what Bible did Christ follow? God is the word. I don't think he followed a particular Bible. That's I don't know if that's a serious question. All right, let's go to a proper one.
Well, yeah.
What were you going to say? Respond if you like.
It's okay. It's a long, it's not something I feel like it'll be a long thing, but whoever that is, I'll write. I got a really good article on that, actually. I can.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
through after.
All right, here we go. Australian Protectionist Party. This looks like a decent question. Do you believe in demons? If so, what's your take on them?
Excuse me for a minute, Australian Protectionist Party. I'll just get my foil hat. Hang on. No, this is an interesting subject. Yes, I believe in demons without doubt. What demons are is a good question. I mean, if you look at pre-Diluvian times and you look at the Nephilim and things like that, there's a lot of sort of, I guess, theology, around the idea that the offspring of the fallen angels, the 200 fallen angels and the mighty men.
I've done shows on them.
Their bodies, obviously with the flood, perished, but their spirit lived on, which would be the demonic forces that we see.
Yeah.
Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. I am very interested in pre-Diluvian and
so am I.
Genesis 6, the Book of Enoch. I'm very interested in all those things.
The Book of Giants.
Yeah, but without doubt, they are real. They're in the Bible, so you can't deny their existence.
Where do you go? Yeah.
So,
Johnny Canuck, what about Gnosticism? Go ahead.
This is an interesting question again. Do you have like 10 hours to go through this one? I don't like going into Gnosticism. Like, I don't like going into these things being a woman. One, I only like to talk about things that I feel like I have an authority on, something that I've sort of studied. There's a lot of different theologies around Gnosticism. I don't feel like I have an authority to.
Fair enough. He means the Gnostic Gospels. I don't think they're canon, so I think that in itself may be an answer. Have you ever watched American Gospel? Is that a movie? What is that? All right.
American Gospel.
Okay, this is an interesting question. I mean, it's an obvious answer. I already know the answer to this. Evelyn, do you believe that sodomy is a sin? It's in the Bible, so.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, yeah. All right, let's have a look. I want to read them before I put them up because I don't want to put up anything that will make you or I uncomfortable. In Luke, I think this is a legitimate question. In Luke 13:1-3, Jesus spoke of human sacrifice but never called on Christians to oppose it. So should we oppose abortion, euthanasia, and try to ban it?
Yes. 10 Commandments.
Yes, exactly. Like
Number 6.
Do you believe in the young earth theory or billions of years, 6-day creation, or thousands of years?
Young earth.
Do you believe feminism is cancer?
Worse, it's COVID. No, I'm kidding. I think
women can be funny. Sorry, keep going.
Look, I think that there is certainly a need for feminism in some parts of the world. I'm not sure that the West is the place for it. I certainly think there are things in the West that are difficult for women, and I certainly think there are things in the West that are very difficult for men. But do we require the type of force of feminism today? Absolutely not in the West.
There was one from Kyle. He's a good guy. Does Evelyn agree that every second spent on politics is a waste, as culture can only change by the gospel? So then, shouldn't we spend all of our time on evangelism and discipline?
I don't think you can separate politics from the gospel. I think that
they go hand in hand.
Say again?
They go hand in hand these days.
Yeah, I think that, there's a lot of argument about separation of church and state. I don't believe that that's the right way to go. But yeah, I think that as long as when we're talking about politics, we're doing it furthering the gospel and doing it to promote him, I think that it's almost necessary for Christians to get involved with politics.
I think that's very true. Do you know, I came from a church, the Brethren Church, and that particular church promoted never involving yourself, because we have to be in the world but not of the world. So you just pray and you stand aside. That's the Brethren Church. These are people who don't think getting your ears pierced is okay and that wearing pants is male.
I think
so there are Christians that think the opposite to what you just said, is my point.
Well, God tells us that we need to go forth into the world and spread the gospel. It started off with 12 men, and now we're at 31% of the entire world's population who identify as being Christian. You look at China, you've got a country where Christianity is, is kind of frowned upon, and they've got over 60 million people there who now identify as Christians, and it's bigger than the country Australia. And so I think I think it's very important for us to go out in the world and spread the gospel. I think that the idea of staying in your little communities is probably not the right way to go, if in terms of the brethren's mentality on that. But I was just thinking about the question that was asked before about Gnosticism and stuff. The reason why I didn't understand is because I think it was it Krusty or something? He was asking, I wanted to know, just clarify what he was actually asking, if he wants to write a comment, whether I think it's heresy or whether I think there are some things, I wasn't sure. So if he wants to clarify, I felt really rude. I didn't answer that properly. Anyway, if you, sort of say that.
Okay, Rocky Dennis, is sodomy a worse sin than premarital intercourse? Rocky, you can just read the Bible and you get the answer yourself. But anyway, go ahead, Evelyn.
I think there is a tricky
sin
one.
is sin, isn't it? Someone who steals can go to hell, and someone who lied to their parents can go to hell, and then if you turn your back on your sin, you can go to heaven. Accept the sacrifice of Christ. Go ahead.
I think both of those things are wrong, and both of those things are in contradiction to what the Bible says, and I think both of those things will be judged accordingly, and we'll find out one day. But they are both sinful, and should not be done.
For sure. So then why did Jesus not tell his followers to try to get political leaders to follow his law? I don't even know what that means. Probably shouldn't have put that one up. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. All right, let me keep looking. We have 3 minutes left, guys, and then Evelyn is out. Let's have a look. There are no real other questions. All right. I want to ask you something that bothered me a little bit. On my Instagram story, you reckon somehow that Goku is more powerful than Superman. How do you think that? I love
He's
Goku.
not more powerful than Superman.
You voted that he could win against Superman.
Well, Batman beats Superman sometimes, but Superman's way stronger.
Yeah, true.
There's just no one that can beat Superman, like as in based on Superman's actual powers. You can't. But there's flaws, and Batman. He's just a person.
Yes,
he's
but
just an old rich man.
But he holds kryptonite.
He doesn't always hold kryptonite. Look at
it's in his little belt. Not
all the time.
Well,
not in the recent movies, and he still beats him.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. So I think there's a chance for the underdog.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. All right. So he came back with the new question, and he's asked you now. Okay, is Gnosticism heresy?
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Yes. Okay.
Done.
I just sometimes think of the complex things because my brain goes into like little rabbit holes. So I don't know what. I just wanted to clear up. Do I think it is heresy? Yes, but I didn't know if there was another angle there because it's a complex thing in other areas. That's all.
I do like the idea of the Gnostic chapters because there's like a whole bunch of other books that exist. Like there's the Book of Thomas, which the Quran, I guess, what's the word? Copyrighted? I don't know what the word is, but basically there's in the Book of Thomas, they talk about a clay bird that Jesus made. And we know this today that a lot of the miracles of Jesus were not mentioned in the Bible. He performed so many that we probably won't even know half of them until like we go to heaven and we see. And so he made a bird out of clay, and that's not in the Bible, but that is in the Quran. That's because the Quran took that from the Book of Thomas. I don't know if the Book of Thomas is a Gnostic book or not, but my point is that it is interesting that there are other writings that corroborate the existence of Christ, first of all, and they may be heresy, but they still corroborate that there was a man named Jesus that lived 2,000 years ago.
I think all heresies are things that deviate from the Bible. So if it's not in the Bible, Genesis through Revelation, I think that it tends to lean in the category of heretical teachings.
But you've contradicted yourself there, because earlier you said the book of Enoch. That's not in the Bible, but it's something Go ahead.
I just simply said I enjoy studying it. Not that I believe it's should be in the Bible. I do not think that the book of Enoch should be in the Bible. Yes, the book of Enoch is quoted by Jude and by other things in the Bible. Does it give it more tendency for me to believe that there are things in there that could be true? Yes. But do I treat it as though it's 100% biblical truth? No. I treat it very much that it could be. It's very interesting and I find it intriguing, but I certainly do not live my life getting caught up on Enoch or the other books because they are not in the Bible. Yeah.
Well, I do find it interesting that it was quoted. So that to me gives it validity, me personally. And I also think the book of Jubilees, which is not mentioned in the Bible, which is mentioned in the Bible, someone quotes it. And the book of Jubilees also does verify the Nephilim story. So I find that super interesting too. But Nephilim is a topic that I've spoken about in great detail. Like I had ufologist Tim Alberino, the foremost expert on the topic, on my channel like 2 years ago. And so he talked about the book of Enoch, and he said that it does. Also, it used to be in the Bible. Did you know that? The book of Enoch was once upon a time in the Bible and it was removed. This is what I've read.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure I agree with that.
Okay, no, that's all right. Anyway, we're done now. The hour is completely up. I'm very sorry, everyone. I do want to give Kyle Katazi one last question. Okay, here it is. Are you still a cop? If so, how are you coping with it becoming an increasingly woke arm of the government? I work for myself deliberately to avoid having to answer to anyone.
I resigned in 2020. And I'm very glad that I did when I did, because at the moment, I don't think I could in good conscience do the things that police are being required. But I wasn't in uniform. I was a detective and I worked in specialized units, child sex crimes and things like that. So I was in a very niche, different type of policing, and I hadn't worked the beat or uniform since Moses was a child. So, a long time. So even though I probably wouldn't have been made to do the things that cops we're seeing come out, I'm very grateful I'm not in there because of the things I'm seeing.
Fair enough. Well, guys, that's it for today. I know a lot of you asked some questions that I didn't ask, but that's because we're not talking about that topic today, so it's irrelevant. So everyone, thank you so much. Evelyn, I am happy to promote you, and I will continue to do so, because platforming a Christian is obviously awesome. And thank you so much for coming on my show. I don't know who my guest next week will be, but I'm working on someone, so hopefully that person I'm thinking of will come on. Thank you, everyone. No, not about being single. The question, different question. Anyway, guys, I'll let you all go. God bless you all, and remember to pray for your enemies. See you later. Thanks, Evelyn. Oh, did you want to plug anything?
No, I just apologize for my put on the spot theology. I'm someone who likes to think about things a bit more than this, but thanks for bearing with me through all the awful answers that I probably gave.
Nah, you were good. Stop
also,
being
just
mean to yourself.
Hot off the press. Cauldron Pool has been suspended for a week off Twitter. So if you want to find out like the articles that I'm writing and everybody else, probably won't get it on Twitter anymore. You'll have to go directly to the website, cauldronpool.com, because they have just been pulled the plug out. So
how horrible.
Here we go. This is
the world we're living in. This is the world we're living in. Mm-hmm. So, well, thank you for that sad exclusive.
Yeah, there you go.
Full Cauldron Pool. All right. Bye, guys.
All right.